share that, so when we're talking, we're at least talking apples to apples.
Say that again, Lynn. What about the URL?
I was happy to hear that when we're pulling the data, we can copy and paste the URL so that we're sharing and we're talking apples to apples when we're doing this with all the other teachers.
Yes. And to have a Helio viewer for magnetometer data, that's got to be pretty amazing. So Dawn, and the reason why we can't get 2015 data is because they have to get the data and then clean it up so it's all.
I think that's
right?
that's what I understood too. This is the first I've heard about this, so this is awesome. I was learning too. I was like, oh, that's so cool.
Okay, on the video, what are you going to see? You're going to see the data? Because what he showed was a whole bunch of little dots that represent location of magnetometers.
Yeah, I don't know. This is the first I've seen it, so we'll have to play with it.
And then you can see the night and day, I'm assuming. That was the gray and the white. And then all he said is they would wiggle. And I missed something there.
Yeah, we'll have to play with it, Vic. You might have to go in and like Dawn was saying, this was a big surprise, you know, especially to Dawn, and she works with us. But it was a kind of a special bonus. So I'm not sure either. I saw the same thing. I wasn't sure what he meant by the wiggle. So maybe you could go play with it, Vic, and you could report back to us. That would be amazing. That would be super.
I can ask him tomorrow too. When I type in SuperMag, I get inaccessible content, so the lab is blocking it from me. So hopefully you guys will have better luck. So if you guys play with it and then have questions, I can ask Rob.
That would be great. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you. And of course, you're welcome to invite him to the Widgeo as well if he wants to be there.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, as well. So, and Chris here, if you didn't see in the chat, Chris is, you know, so if you, your mailbox might have been blowing up lately between what I've been doing on there, and then Chris and Lynn have been very busy after, inspired by their GEONS workshop, to use a lot of this. And in the chat here, Chris has put that that he has a PowerPoint, a slide set that walks you through what you can use the Van Allen probe's gateway with and how to use it. So that is really wonderful, Chris. And Lindsay, you know, thank you for pointing out that it's so great that all the audio and the video is recorded at the same time so that we can go back and listen again, because these meetings are so rich and full. And I experienced that too, Chris, where my audio goes out and I always have to think, I guess I'll have to catch the highlight reel. But it's frustrating in the moment. So I hope that you and Lynn will talk a little bit about that, about what you've been doing with that in just in a little bit here, Chris. That would be really exciting. I'm totally stoked by what you guys are doing. So thank you, Dawn, for inviting Rob to come tonight. That was really super to see, to have him share all of that and keep connected with the missions. So any other questions or anything that comes up for anybody before we move on to the next topic, which is really the same topic. We're talking about the same thing in several different spheres tonight. Yes, Vic.
I will point out that having Rob, after listening to what Chris did, and then having Rob, starting to make sense. It takes me a couple of 3 times. It's starting to make a little sense on value, on what it can be used for.
Exactly, and that is I think it takes all of us, and you know, we have to pre-digest it before we can present it to our students, right? And the work that you all do here is so helpful because it can go and help other teachers as well, those who might join our community later or those that we might be in contact with, because like Rob said, there's valuable stuff here for the public and for our students, but knowing how to use it, not only how to access it, but you know, that why should we care component, right? What does it tell us? How is it useful? And that does take some massaging. So I'm glad that there's some overlays and I was always told as a teacher, you say things 3 times in 3 different ways for the different temperaments in the classroom. So, you say it the first time for the clerics because they've got it the first time, and you got to say it again for the second time for the sanguines because they were watching a butterfly, and the third time for the phlegmatics because they were thinking about snack and breakfast. And you don't say it a 4th time because that would insult the melancholics. So, but that way all of them get to hear it in some way that helps them do it. So speaking,
I'm sorry, Andy.
No, go ahead. No, that's all right.
To hear you ask about the L shell again. When Rob was explaining it to me today, he was talking about the lower part of the colorful graphs. That is the inner radiation belt, and then as you move up on the graph, it shows further and further away from the Earth. So the greater the L shell number, and also the further out from the Earth. So the big chunks of color, the big chunks of red that you're seeing, that's the outer radiation belt. That's how he explained it to me today. He had to explain it very simply, and pointing different parts to it. So I was happy to hear that you were asking the same question that I had.
Yeah, I got into a conversation with a ham radio operator, and his interest in the ionosphere is completely different than my take. And he was discussing how, as the ionosphere changes, his reception changes at different frequencies. Again, it made no sense, but it would be nice if we have someone who is a ham operator, you're talking about application, who actually uses the sideband radio or the ham operator, the shortwave radio, and tie it in to what we're finding with the Van Allen belt. I just found that was kind of an interesting segue.
Yeah, that's really cool.
No
Do you
clue.
know him? Would he be able to come to a meeting?
He's a retired principal.
Awesome. That's perfect.
They went on the dark side. When you become a principal, you go on the dark side.
We all got a little dark in us, Vic. It might do us good.
I will.
But he's retired, so he might be coming back.
Yeah, I'll try to get a hold of him and get a little more information from him. He's actually my brother-in-law, so I got a little bit of twist there.
It's not just some look.
Well, sorry to interrupt, Andy.
No, that's okay. I was going to actually ask Lynn, because I will, I know there's lots here, and Lindsay can definitely help as well. Yes, Chris, you're on the same wavelength I am as well, because I know that for one of the classes that Pat Reif teaches at Rice, she had, which is it's for middle school and high school science teachers. So it's not graduate students in heliophysics. But she does, as part of her summer teacher symposiums, she has them get certified as ham radio operators. And that she uses it for something. Lindsay, please help me here, because I know I've listened to her talk about it, and I just, I always thought, oh, that's kind of cool, but it never registered with me what they were doing with that. And then Lynn, doesn't Radio Jove also work with something very similar?
Isn't that radio waves? Radio Jove? I'm still looking into it. I don't know. I do know that I like solarham.com for looking at space weather in conjunction with spaceweather.com. I do know that when we are at solar maximum, radio waves bounce better and they get further reception than when we have solar minimum, when there's not a lot of activity. So how Radio Jove works within that aspect, I do not know. I do know that there are a couple people in our astronomy club that are also ham radio operators. So if we wanted somebody else to talk, we have a gentleman here in town. He also is on the IRIS mission, and he's a certified or licensed ham radio. And so I could try to get a hold of him and see if he'll talk to us about what's going on with IRIS.
That's so cool. And Chris actually has a handle, He's KC8KRY on solarham.net. So it sounds like we have some good solar ham things that we could speak about. Chris, I know Lynn can't see you, and I know you can't talk because of the bandwidth, but is what Lynn's saying, is that ring true to you, what's being said, or maybe you can talk? And I know, Brian, you popped back on because you may have more insight to what Pat does. So everybody talk about solar ham, yay.
I was just typing in the chat, but I'll say it out loud and I'll finish typing. So it's not Radio Jove that interests itself in the ionosphere. It's the sudden ionospheric disturbance monitors, or the SID monitors, that use the ionosphere. They're using frequencies that are broadcast by the Navy. The Navy uses to communicate with their ships that are over the horizon. And you can build your own antenna in the classroom that will pick up those transmissions. You can't decode them, but you can at least detect them. And you can measure the change in strength of them as a function of time, and that has to do with what's happening to the ionosphere. So they actually bounce those signals off of the ionosphere, and the depth of the ionosphere changes with solar activity. We should probably do a presentation about the ICON mission for this group, and we can talk more about the ionosphere there and how it gets affected by solar radiation.
Yes, we're going to either do that in October or November, so people should definitely come back because we have lots to talk about that. Chris, what do you have to add, if anything? Can you talk, Chris? Are you able to? Okay. Oh, rats, because it looks like you have more to say.
I want to ask you another question. When I was talking to my brother-in-law, he was talking about broadcasting at different frequencies, and different frequencies reacted differently off the ionosphere according to the conditions. Now, I'm trying to put this together with something I could do with kids, that you could say, okay, we've got some ham radio operators here in town. So we'd say, okay, now with this conditions, what can you predict is going to happen? What can you see happening? Is there a tie in there that it could work?
I'm sure there is, Vic.
Yeah, I mean, so I know that I grew up with one of my best friends was a ham radio operator, and I recall that when the conditions were right, you can get their signals to bounce the furthest, and I can't remember if that's during high opacity in the ionosphere or low opacity, but it's kind of fun. Then you can see how far away can you communicate, and that could be a function of the ionosphere's depth of ionization.
So how could finding that help predict something, do you think, Brian, or if anything?
Well, it may not be so much of a prediction as a result. I mean, you can't predict a solar flare. So say it's a solar flare that happens and it deepens the ionosphere. So it's something that would be a result of the deepening of the ionosphere.
More of a cause and effect.
Right. So this is one of the effects. You're not going to be able to predict, say, the solar flare, but you will know that the solar flare happened because of that.
Well, and then you could actually use the Van Allen probe's data and compare it to what a ham operator finds out, and begin to get a cause and effect of what the Van Allen belt sees happening out in the ionosphere and what the ham operator is capable of doing.
Yep, that's right. And Lindsay is just thinking along the same lines. You can have students be able to compare these different kinds of data and then make the connections between what's happening to the whole system.
Which is similar to how using the Van Allen probe's data gateway and the the SuperMag site to show, how Rob was saying, where you can see what's actually happening at the spacecraft level and then what resulted on the ground, and do those comparisons and find that relationship within there to be able to, not with the radios, but, oh, this is so cool because this is exactly what I wanted. Oh, I'm so excited right now. This is so great. So there's the SID site from there. Lindsay, were you talking about Deborah Scherer's? Oh no, you said you answered my question. Yes. Okay, so that'll be I'll write that down and look that up on Wavelengths. More to talk about there. Yay. Well, I'm glad that this conversation's okay. First things first. What else do we want to, before I just move us along? It's 6 weeks. Once again, the conversation is rich and juicy and can go many directions. And so I want to honor that this is something really, does anybody else have any questions or thoughts they want to add to what we've discussed so far before I move us along? Because my head is going in a million directions right now. Okay, so last month, Pat Reif came and spoke with us about KP indices and auroral prediction. And it was a rich and full conversation, as is always with Pat. She's really full of lots of information and lots of really good ideas, and always very thorough. But there was a lot of information there, especially about just to kind of get to the meat of what it was that she was saying. There were so many great things, especially the conversation about how the magnitude of the magnetic field changes within, when is it the B vector and where the V and the V vectors come together with the solar wind, and talking about that phenomenon. So what I did do is to kind of go back and kind of digest a little bit for all of us. And I definitely, as a work in progress, I'm going to put this up for you on the Widgeo, but kind of a bullet point list of what Pat was talking about and how we can use this data, this solar weather data, to make predictions as well with our students. And especially Brian, I'm hoping that you will I took Pat's words and put them into one paragraph. And so I hope what I said was true. I think it is. I was pretty careful. And it makes sense to me. So anyhow, but looking at those conditions of the solar wind. So a solar event happens. We may, solar wind, of course, is always flowing, and sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it is stormy. But in those periods, depending on those conditions, including the direction and the velocity of the solar wind, it moves around our Earth's magnetosphere, and of course, pushing on the day side of the magnetosphere and shortening that. And according to the velocity, it's going to push the magnetosphere even harder to where it begins to map with the ionosphere and move it along with it, and those create electrical currents, as you all know. I know I'm saying things that this group knows really, really well. Just like a generator, it really is sad that we can't stick a couple wires up there and just take advantage of all that free energy all the time. But when that ionosphere begins to map and move and those electrical currents are created, then aurora are seen. They create those magnetic perturbances, and co-located with the perturbances is the aurora, and what manifests visually as the aurora. So one of our questions was, how do we use this data, and what data will help us make those predictions about aurora? And so Pat talked about the auroral electrojet index, or the AE index, where it takes the greatest magnitude of positive magnetic perturbance and the greatest magnitude of negative magnetic perturbance and adds them together. And she showed us that great, she took us to this, the Kyoto site, where they show those, and she called it an envelope. And you could see on those graphs, so it would create the pockets of those magnitudes together. And when you get really, really high AE indexes, it does give us an idea of the possibility of aurora, and the greater, or it will tell us the probability of aurora, I should say. And that when we get a number above 1,500, then that means you can see them in the upper latitudes of the United States. So there was this piece with the Royal Electro Index. She also shared with us the space weather forecast, which is funded by MMS, and that takes several indices and shows you what measurements we're getting and can help determine whether or not you're going to see aurora under those different conditions. Another Van Allen belt connection is that it also uses the DST indice, and that is measures the electrical perturbances, currents flowing from the Van Allen belts because of where it is on our Earth. But anytime the KP is above 6, you're going to get a good indicator of aurora being visible. Although, Lynn, you told us that last month, for that last storm in June, that the KP was 3 and you still were able to see aurora. So that was, the conditions are always variable, right? The Ovation Aurora Prediction site will give you a 30-minute window. So it measures the whole auroral oval and gives you that really pretty, a lot of you already use that site, but it will give you a good indicator of within 30 minutes about whether or not there's a window for you to be able to see. So if you want to check at 2 a.m., you see the KAP index is going up, and you want to check in later about that. And then, of course, in Lil is that wonderful site that shows us the direction and velocity of the solar wind. So if we see it, we hear about a CME or a solar flare, we can check in Lil and see what the direction and velocity is. Your students can make predictions about the AE index as well as the KP index, and then they can go to use that to predict whether or not there's going to be aurora. And then they can bring that full circle by connecting with aurorasaurus.org and having your aurora watchers go see if there were auroras. And that, of course, we've heard from them a few times where that overlays the auroral prediction to what actually was cited by people. So there's a recap. I will post it on the wheel for us to all to use. I think, okay, I'm looking here for all of us. I think Brian just found, I would like to, Chris, you're saying, I would imagine that something could be set up to send alert for deepening. Oh, I see, you guys are still talking about hammer radio, never mind. There's a map which will show what KP is needed to see aurora in your area. Oh, where is that, Vic? That would be really great to include in our aurora resources. Can you put that in the chat or tell us, or?
Yeah, I'd have to go find it again, but I've used it a couple of times. I have some students who did it and used it. It's I can go mundle around it and find it.
That would be really super if you wouldn't mind, and then we
Sure.
can add that to our resources.
Sure.
So,
and it was real interesting. I think it was last week we had a beautiful aurora. Unfortunately, it was during the day. The magnetometer definitely indicated there was a tremendous disturbance overhead, but it was broad daylight. So use of the equipment and use of the eyes, you got places for both.
absolutely. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not happening, right? Lynn, were you going to say something?
Yeah, we had the KP was 7, and it was midday for us here too. And the smoke was it was too much. By the time it got dark, we just had too much smoke. We couldn't see the mountains, so we couldn't see the sky.
Oh, bummer. So there's a little recap of what Lynn, or I'm sorry, not what Lynn, but what Pat shared with us last month, and gives you some good sites again. But it brings us back to that question is, how can we have access to such great data? How do we bring this to the students and help them use it? And we've also, over the last 2 years, been able to share many resources, some of you of your own resources, some of them from the different missions at NASA, the Heliophysics missions. And we have some really great opportunities to be able to really take these solar events and incorporate real-time data for our students to help make them to not only research and investigate, but also to make predictions in different ways. And that's what I'm hoping together as a community we can start to do, is how do we sequence these? We have the Helio concept map, so we know what concepts are good to teach when. But where do these resources fit within those concepts? And where does the data come in? How can we incorporate all those together so that we have this really, can really have the students engage deeply with these missions, with this data, meaningfully and be able to share it out with folks. And so that's the work that over time we've heard come back. How do we use all of these things together? Chris and Lynn have started that with the GEONS magnetometer stuff. So that was why I was really excited when I saw that folder go up. And Lynn explained a little bit about Chris explained a little bit about what you're trying to do. And so Vic, having that aurora piece is will help us along with what we're trying to do.
Hey, you want me to share my screen? I've got it.
Great, that'd be perfect.
If I can figure out how to share my screen.
It's the big green button at the bottom of the window that says share screen.
Yeah, but I'm all over the place here. I've lost them. There we are. Here I am. Okay, and here I am. And there I'm going to share the screen. Share screen only. This is the map. There's another one out there that is a little finer. It'll actually go KPs by 1. And it's a NOAA map. I think Chris just posted where it's at too, so.
Super. Yes, thank you very, very much. So where was the KP when you could see as far south as Georgia? Was the KP above 9 then?
Well, see, that's you hear this. This is an average. Okay. There's other things that can happen. In other words, you get a KP of 6, it can go down even deeper than this. It all depends on, I think a lot of it depends on the night sky, how it's interacting with a magnetic field also. So to me, the KP is an average. If you would pick a AE of your specific site, you'd probably get a better picture.
That makes sense to me. Yeah, that AE site was really, really helpful to be able to see that. And that would explain why Lynn was able to see aurora, even though the KP was only 3 on the day that she was able to see it. And this is where I'm wishing Wendy was with us as well, because she did, she has her students actually figure out the KP, and she has them do the whole formula, and she would be able to talk about those conditions that allow them to do that. So Wendy, when you watch this later, it'd be great if you, in her slide resources, she has a slide set on there that we can all refer to, that is a resource. So anything more to say about that before I kind of tie it into the rest of our time here, or anybody?
Yeah. And also the aurora is 1 to 300 kilometers above the Earth. I was at a stargazing event a couple months ago, and we could see the aurora. And then when we got on Aurorasaurus, we could see that the aurora was actually above Calgary, which is several hundred miles north of us.
Wow. That's
so
funny.
Sometimes you can see them low on the horizon. It's really cool when you can look straight up and see it. Like the event that we had on June 22nd, it actually, I was able to look south to see it. Usually I just look north to see the aurora. So it's nice when it's overhead.
That would be really cool. I've only ever seen them on the horizon, but I live, I was watching them in Wisconsin. So, Don, were you going to chime in with something?
Oh, no, I didn't realize my speaker was on. Sorry.
I didn't hear you. It just went green. I thought maybe you were wanting to say something.
Oh, no, I was writing a note to Rob, and I think I clicked it by accident.
We like hearing your voice. It's good. So, excellent. So I'm just going to touch briefly, since we have such a small group, kind of highlight maybe some pathways or pose some questions to you about how we might be able to start this work, and then have Chris and Lynn share what you're doing. I think that'll tie in and segue really nicely for the rest of our time. And then as all the rest of you that also went to the GEONS meeting, which I think is everybody here tonight. Let me share my screen. If I can find, here we go, folder page. Yep. All right. I have low bandwidth tonight. All right. So here in the Widgeo, remember how it was like lists and lists and lists long of all of our resources. I've managed to get them into a great, or at least kind of start to formulate them into several categories, and that we might be able to use to help students be able to trace things from beginning to end, or to investigate different events using different data. And I'm trying to get another website up here, sorry. Usually I have it. Weather Action Center, there it is. All right, so I think most of you are probably familiar with the Space Action Weather Center, right? And if not, it's a great place, and we can talk about that as well. Now I've got to find the place. Where is it here? Nope. Sorry. I'm kind of, see if it's here. There we go. That's the one I wanted. All right. So at the Space Weather Action Center, they've taken the different data portals, and there are many more that we use. These are not necessarily mission specific, like how many of our resources that we've shared in this group are. And they look at sunspot regions, storm signals, magnetosphere, and auroras. So this is all data that you can use starting at any point, and then kind of figure out where to go next. Once we look at, you know, the data collection for storm signals, you can move on to the effects on the magnetosphere, auroral activity. So I try to do that as well for our materials as well. So Lynn and Chris, I left your folder out right now. I left it on the top tier because I didn't want to mess with what you were doing. And I have arranged them, all of our resources, according to sun and solar observing resources. So whether that's just any kind of solar activity, whether it be sunspots or something else. Magnetosphere and magnetism, so that those activities can go together, space weather resources, and aurora resources. And then we have our other things that we always use. So within these folders, and it's kind of a little bit messy at the moment, but I've moved the resources that we have had presented into that folder according to its category. And so that you can be able to do that. So here's Dr. Baker's social and economic impacts of solar weather presentation. The Van Allen pieces are all here, including, I know that when Dawn is able to, she's already posted it right there. The workbook that was presented before from Van Allen probes is there. So this includes not only the data sites that we've talked about, but the actual activities that you can use in teaching the concepts to your students, whatever is needed. So that we're not just sending them somewhere random to be like, hey, let's look up this cool number, but also to help teach them these different concepts. So what I would like for us to begin to do is that to go through these folders and look, and first of all, do you agree where I've stuck stuff, you know, or could it go somewhere else? For instance, I asked Dawn the other day, would you put Van Allen probes here or here? Because it's kind of both. It can go either place in a couple of folders. But what is most important is what makes sense to you as an educator. And look through and start looking at the resources that we have had presented, and how can we sequence these together, whether it's starting with a solar event and tracing it through and following it through to your magnetometer data and auroral observations. Perhaps the magnetometer goes off and you have this, and how do we help the students trace it back or investigate and research back? How would you as an educator use these resources to help your students really understand the real-time phenomena that they're observing or investigating to be able to do? Does that make sense? It seems like if we can work together as a community to start to piece those together, is that something that would be helpful to you as well if we can get some, I don't know if it's like I just keep thinking of it as a sequence, like, you know, first start here and then you could use this mission and this data and this portal to be able to do this. And if your kids don't understand that, use this activity type of thing. But does that make sense or seem helpful to any of you?
Yeah, this is what, to me, I have to digest this stuff. So I'm sitting here taking notes. And then when I finally figure out, hey, I could use it, then I can't find it. So yeah, I can definitely see a value to using these folders.
And I am so glad that you said that, Vic, because I have to say that in the, you know, the month that I've been kind of spending a half an hour here and then a half an hour there, starting to kind of try to put this together, I have discovered, so like Wendy's PowerPoint, you know, she was the one who's acting like, I would like to know more about KP, yet she's the one that has the slide sets that talks about how to find KP and how, you know, I was like blown away, and they are really good. They were really informative, and so many times we've all asked, like, how do we use that so that the kids could trace it back, find the, you know, could we take a solar event, and then can we, you know, how do we piece it together so they can see whether or not it impacted Earth? So this is the work that I would like to kind of, and those of you who are also watching would like to implement. The added layer to that is, and this kind of goes to speak more about what you were talking about as well, Vic. And I believe, so here, way back, all of you, I think all of you are people that were here from the beginning, members that are here from the beginning. Many of you helped put together these Helio concept maps with NASA, and that was where you took, at that time we didn't have NGSS, we just had the benchmarks, but really developed a set of concepts that addresses 3 very large questions and put them together in grade bands to help teachers answer the question, okay, so when do I teach this stuff? Where is it appropriate and in what order do I teach it? And, you know, if we can kind of sequence and kind of, what's the word, inventory the resources that we have and be able to communicate the resources we have, how they can be used, but also where they might fit within these concept maps. And that leads into Wendy's work of wanting to, you know, she needs to do things with the NGSS. And I'm starting to, if we can get this in place in a more formed way, then the next step would be where does that fit in with the NGSS to help Wendy? And that work we can look at next month, but including putting these into the concept maps. So this is the challenge that I would like to offer our community to come together and work. And I don't know, how can we best do this? Would it be best if people were like volunteer to look at a different, like each category and kind of looked at how they might use it or what sequence those they would be used in, and then, you know, look at the concept maps and say these resources or these ideas fit in with these concepts? Would that be the test? Does everybody want a chance to like look at it all? Because I'm sure with school starting, you have tons of time to look at 1 million resources and try to answer how do these fit in with what the overall heliophysics picture is. What might be helpful and what type of package would be helpful to you as a, and I can try to help orchestrate and manage and facilitate to help us do that.
A lot of good questions there.
And I want them all answered
yes,
right now.
Right now, I would like to see, flow chart. So your magnetometer is jiggling. What do you do to find out about what's going on? And so a flow chart, or you just found out that there was a flare, or you just found out that there was an earthbound CME. What can you do to follow it, and what resources are out there? So I'm sure that there's ways that we could put it together so that we can follow it from the sun to the earth, or follow it from the earth backwards, and throw in the Helio viewer, the RBSPs, ACE, all of these different resources, and the different PowerPoints that we do have in there, as well as all of the activities that are in the Themis mission for GEONS, all of those, as well as the ones from Space Science Sequence. There's some things in there that we've used. Making sure that when we say that they're in there, that we use their name and put together an index for each one of those folders so people can find things.
Awesome. So what I hear you saying is like some sort of organizer that gives an indication of pathways of what you're teaching and how you use this. You know, I like that concept of the flow chart. You know, so this happens, where do you, you know, what can you do in sequencing those pieces? But I hear that some sort of organizer that really you can hand to somebody and go, here. I'm also creating, at the same time, I've been going what resources we have in the Widgeo, I'm creating a wavelength list for. so that they are all, and we can also add the external resources, and I've been kind of tying back to that as well as part of to try to help us in this organizing. So hopefully we can find some way that that might be helpful as well. But so hi Diane, I'm so glad you're able to join us. What would be feasible? What is reasonable to ask for your help with? How do we get this done?
How come we didn't have a summer workshop?
We tried, but the availability of people in one time, and this was part of the work we were going to do then. And so I don't expect this to be, you know, this is an ongoing piece. But this was a lot of what we were going to do in that summer workshop or summer retreat. But the availability of, there was not a time where there was more than 4 or 5 people that could be present to be able to do that. So that
can we maybe pick a weekend out in the future and have everybody try to commit for a couple of hours and sit and work on this as a group?
You are reading my Yes, we are going to put out a poll that was one thing when we said we weren't able to have a summer, we would look at doing it further in the fall. We want to give you guys a chance to start your school years and get into that rhythm as well. But that is our hope, Lynn. So having this conversation tonight and kind of determining how could we start chewing on this so that when we come together in that weekend, we can share our work and then do some more work of piecing it together and coming up with more possibilities is kind of the bigger vision. So you've totally vocalized what that bigger vision is.
Okay.
What I think I'm asking is what would be a best, how do you see what would be easiest to begin this work? What would be the best way rather than me saying, we're going to do it this way? You know, do we want a sign up sheet? Do you want it pieced out for you? Do you want to volunteer for certain sections? And then we can kind of touch base on what we've been able to discover next month and kind of piece it together a little bit for Wendy with the NGSS, but then do the bigger work in that retreat. Oh, it's 7:15. Any ideas? And we can continue this on the video as well. And that is a lot to digest there. I think what I'll do is I'll post kind of what I'll do a post on, you know, what the questions are and what the work at the kind of the task in front of us is, and invite you guys to think about it and chime in about how it might be best to go about collaborating on this, and then we'll tie that into finding a weekend where we can really do exactly as Lynn was saying, and that is really sit and do this work deeply together. Would that be helpful if we start there? I
think that would be cool. Putting it all out on the table, this is what we have, doing a gap analysis. Is there activities that we could add to this? Are there other things that we're doing in the classroom that we have not put into here so that we could eventually have together a product and hand it to teachers and saying, here's some background information that we've put together, some PowerPoints to get you going, some activities. This is what's happening. Here's how you can go about teaching it to your class, finding more information, getting your students involved, and learning about all of this.
Super, Lynn. I will totally do that. I'm just now seeing all the chat piece in here about this. So great. This will be Strandsman. Yes, good. Well, Diane, you've been hard on my mind through all of this because your comments about in that meeting about the conversation you had to have where they're like, yeah, this is great. You're able to do this, but we don't know how it fits. And so we don't want to. And that was really the impetus of how much this is needed to be able to, you know, how could you help use that with your school district as well. So I'm glad that you pointed that out. Well, I will do that. I will kind of do it. Keep it's simple to extensive plus teaching is global. Right. No, that's why I'm asking, Vic, is it's got to be manageable pieces. So I'll definitely start with kind of what we've talked about, and I like the idea too of a gap analysis, Lynn, of like, you know, where are the gaps, where does it fit, and we can just keep the conversation going. Next month, combine back together and say, you know, what have we discovered, how can we change, and start to organize it graphically maybe a little bit. And do some other pieces. Yes, we are going to be, exactly, Chris. So next month, as we start this it's so big and it was really retreat worthy, and I'm trying to make it fit into them. I want to make sure there's time for you guys to get to talk, because you guys have already done this with the GEONS stuff. So it's a really great model for what is going on. Exactly. So did help in she has to align her curriculum to NGSS. So my work for the next month is to look at those Helio concept maps and start laying them next to the NGSS. And there's a couple tools that I'm going to be using for that, so that not only are we able to say according to time, you know, in this flow chart, but here's how it connects to the NGSS as well. So it's like the Helio concept maps are being kind of interconnected with the NGSS, and it all comes together with that. So yeah, one of the pieces, so if you've ever been in Wavelength, and well, I know you've all been in Wavelength, but in those strand maps where you can click on the AAAS benchmark and see the activities that we have in Wavelength that address that benchmark. All of the AAAS benchmarks have been what's called crosswalked with the NGSS according to, and Lindsay, correct me if I'm wrong, according to just the DCIs. So we have a document that's going to allow us to help start that piece, Chris, very, very easily. As I'm doing some different work for a different forum with the NGSS, and I was like, oh, I had all my NGSS out, right? And I was like, I'll just take the concept maps and just align them to NGSS. And I was like, wait a minute, I think this has already been done. So we're waiting to get that information to see how this particular research group did put the AAAS benchmarks and NGSS together. But absolutely, we need to be thinking about that for sure, just because it's great. So awesome. I've got my work cut out for us, so look for a post in the next couple of days about that. And thank you for your input on how we can really utilize these resources, because you know, you guys are the experts as it is, and we want it to be accessible and attainable to other people. So as a really great segue, I think most of you were at an amazing workshop. All of you GEONS teachers had a chance to come together. It wasn't for the Helio community, although we were invited to come virtually. But it was specifically kind of a reunion retreat so that new teachers could start using magnetometers at their schools. And so I'm just going to kind of turn it over to you guys and talk about, especially Chris and Lynn, about the work you've been doing. But if you want to share a little bit about the workshop, and then share with the community what is on there. I know we only have 10 minutes left, and I tried really hard. But I don't want to, this is a really great model for kind of what we're talking about.
I know, it's so cool when we see people live in person. So the GEONS meeting was cool. And then I saw Diane out in Florida, too. First off, the stuff that I put in that folder was stuff that Chris had put together. He had done a good job of putting together the PowerPoint to take to the GEONS meeting. He also took all of our comments saying, we need to do something. We threw some things out at the retreat in Berkeley, and he put it all down in paper and sent an email out to everybody. And so all I did was copy and paste that and throw that on the Wigio before he did. But he did all that work. So it was a collaboration, and we were trying to find a way, like you were just saying, how do we take what we have and go forward, bring the students in and have them use this real data to figure out how we are being affected here on Earth by these storms. We can see it on the magnetometer, and we can follow it through ACE and the Van Allen probes. And so that's just a rough draft thrown out there, and we're still trying to see how it would work. It's going to be a work in progress as we work through it, though. But I think we're going to have a solid product when we're done.
Lynn, I'm going to pull it up on my screen. I was going to ask Chris too, but it's kind of hard when you can't see what you can't drive because he could drive, but you can't see what he's driving. And so, and I know Chris is in constraints. I'm going to pull up. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about what it is that is in these folders? And then also, what is it that you would like from the community? How can we support you in doing this? So if you wanted to do magnetometer resources, Chris and Vic and Lynn already have taken that folder. I'm just joking. All right, let's go back.
But we had thrown out some ideas of what we wanted to do and how we were going to go through it. And then he came up with those three. The PDFs are some research that somebody else has already done. So to give us some more background and some avenues of ways to go. Diane, Chris, and Laura, I don't know who else, have gone through NITARP. And we were kind of using that as a template for going through, having the students do the research and then putting together some sort of formal poster or paper or whatnot of the work that they've done, since this is authentic research. So that's part of the thing too, is we still have a lot of questions on, and that's probably up on that Word document. I know that we discussed this quite a few times when we were in Berkeley. And that's what's really cool about these open-ended things. We don't know the answer. And so which way do you go? And we may say that let's do it this way, but something's going to happen and we're going to realize that we're going down the wrong path and we're going to need to try some other things. You know, one question also is, do we all want to look at the same storm, the same data, and see how, compare that, or have people look at different storms with different results and have the students maybe do a Zoom or some other way of having them post their stuff and do a virtual meeting so that they have a chance to present their findings. There's a lot of different ways and a lot of different tools, and are we going to need all of those tools for every research project? I don't know.
So I'm going to try to talk. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Good. So basically what we're looking at, we have all this data that's coming in through the school-based magnetometers, part of the Themis mission. And we've for years been wanting to do something with it collaboratively with all of our students. So I just, after doing some similar types of things on my own for like a master's degree I was working on and stuff like that, can we see when a substorm starts at each of our stations and see if the timing is different at each station, so you can kind of track as the substorm moves through the auroral oval. And that's where the background reading is coming in. Most of the articles are from the PI of the Themis mission. He's one of the authors on the papers, and it's on the same topics, auroral substorms. So, I need to get a little bit more input that this is something that's worth doing. Does it have any value? Or is it just us playing with data kind of a thing? And of course, we have to maintain our momentum and keep all the teachers on board and get the students on board and push this thing through.
I think it has extreme value, Chris. I think, you know, one thing that is important to me as an educator and as someone who works with other educators is that to me, one thing I see that you have an opportunity for, and it may not be your purpose or point or goal, is that you have a really unique opportunity to show, as we do with the rest of these resources and putting them together and sequencing them, to be able to communicate, you know, here's this thing and here's all of this data and it's in a real place with real people and real students and it answers real questions, and this is how you do that through the work that you're doing right now. Does that make sense? And to me, that is what the real value is in that, is that yes, it's an opportunity for the four of you to collaborate and learn some really cool stuff, but in sharing your findings and then creating some sort of you know, I keep calling it a sequence or whatever, but by sharing that with people, you can show them how they can do it too and why it's important and what it tells them. So I see you as having a really amazing, unique opportunity to be able to do that. And I think that would be valuable to a science community and education community at large.
I have to confess additional motivation as well. What I would really like to do is show the people out there in charge of funding things like these EPO efforts that we can leverage all the different missions together and put something out there that shows that the education and outreach programs of all these missions are valuable and important.
Yes.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. We
You're here. I like that too.
We love you guys.
Yes, this is. I did share with Laura, and Laura's on the Woodgeo. I had a meeting with Laura this morning or this afternoon, and I said, I don't know if you've been on the Woodgeo lately, Laura, but you need to see what your GEONS teachers are doing. And it's really, she was just that. Those were her exact words, Dawn. They are so awesome. So she's really excited by what you guys are being inspired to do as well. But yes, there is definite scientific research value in it. There's definitely science education research value in it. And you absolutely should treat it like a NITART project because this is important stuff and ends up as a product that can really go far in, and not even a product, you know, but teachers want to know how to use this stuff, right? They just don't know and why they should and where does it fit and how do you do it anymore. And so if you guys can offer a model for that and using magnetometer, this has really, really big thinking. So yay, go guys, go. All right. Yes, you know, Lindsay, exactly. Students will be developing and using models, which is one of the NGSS criteria. That's huge. Not just using, you know, the models we give them to prove what we've already told them, but really developing models so that they understand how those processes work and the different cross-cutting concepts. That's huge, 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 huge. Excellent. You guys are so awesome. All right, well, we are at the end of our time tonight. Anybody have anything last minute pieces that they would like to share about pieces coming up or anything we've talked about tonight before we leave?
I did a Pluto Palooza event out here in Bozeman. I had a whole bunch of fun. And then went up to Waterton Peace Parks, and I was the speaker for Friday and Saturday night, and I talked about New Horizons, and we had about 400 people over the 2 nights for that. And then I'm going out to North Dakota again, Vic, to Medora for Dakota Nights, and I will be doing solar education, the IEJ, the Heliophysics, IHCA stuff out there coming up in about 3 weeks. I've used that stuff quite a few times this summer.
That's awesome, Lynn. Would you mind sending me a quick note about what you did with Pluto Palooza, and I'll pass that on to Carrie?
Sure.
Thank you.
She gave me some stuff. She's here in town. Before she left, she gave me some posters and stickers and whatnot to to take and give away, and I don't have anything left. I could have had more.
I can send you stuff if you can use it.
Oh, always. I could take it out to Dakota Nights.
Cool. Just send me a note with what you need.
Okay, will do.
All right. You guys are, I just want to reiterate again, you guys are all awesome. And the work that you're doing is amazing. And we're so grateful that to be able to work with educators like all of you who are so passionate and interested and engaged in your work and want to change it. And what I always, when I talk about you guys, I always say they're not just receivers. They are doers and creators and givers. And that's what makes working with this community so amazing, is that you guys don't show up month after month just wondering what you'll get. You are engaged in the conversation and want to know how to make it meaningful for others as well. So thank you for continuing to be with us for we are in our 3rd year, believe it or not, of doing this. And it's going to be an exciting few more months. We will get that stuff up on the Widgeo and get us all working, and continue to hear from Chris and Lynn and Vic about, so that we can see their work continue to fruition and grow and do some really meaningful stuff with all of this that we've been able to do. Oh, that would be great. Yeah, do post that. Diane, about your notes about the Pluto stuff. So yes, and Lizzie too. This is such great chat. Our chat is so good. I will make sure I have to copy all of this. Thank you for supporting one another and being willing to do so as well. Yeah, just let us know, Chris, and we can definitely help facilitate how to go. We have access to the unlimited time so that you don't constrict it to 40 minutes as well. So just, yeah, I love Lindsay's idea of using the Widgeo to kind of coordinate this, and that'll be a good place for us, or drop us an email. It's nice to be able to support it. So our next meeting is on September 15th. And given that we have jam-packed this hour and 35 minutes, I am guessing that next time is going to be just as really juicy as well. So I'm looking forward to see the work that we do in the next month and what we have to share when we come back. And it'll be another good sharing time. So thank you for joining.
Have fun with the start of school, everybody.
Yes, good luck to your new years. If you do want to invite new people to the Widgeo, yeah, just drop either Lindsay or Dawn, or Dawn or Ricky or I a note, and we can get them added to the Widgeo pretty darn easy. So that's not a problem at all. All right. Well, have a good month, everybody. Good luck. Happy first days of school. Be kind to the students. They'll be kind to you.
Really?
Yes,
Bye.
really.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Fly safe, Lindsay. Fly safe.
Good night, everybody.
Glad you could join us, Diane. All right, good. Well, Ricky, I'm going to go ahead and grab the chat too if you haven't already.
Okay, and remember it downloads to me so I can just email it to you.
Look, it's Lindsay on a plane. That's so cool. Oh my goodness. That's awesome. I'm sorry, Ricky. What about Dawn?
Oh, I said that the chat downloads it from the.
That's right.
So if you just want me to email it to you like I did the other ones, that's fine too.
And I forgot when I saw the end of your chat this afternoon where it said, and Lindsay has the July chats, I was like, why would Lindsay have them? And I was like completely, she was on the plane and I texted her, I was like, Ricky says you have chats? I'd forgotten that the whole getting locked out of the library room happened for you. And I was like, but I thought, why would Lindsay? And she's like, yeah, I probably do. I think they're in the Dropbox. You'll have to look there. And sure enough, there they were. And I totally forgot that had happened to you. So it was just so random in my head. Why would Lindsay have them? So
I'm going to jump off here, guys. I'll talk to you later.
All right, Don, have a good night. Drive safe home.
Bye.
Well, that was an exciting meeting. We'll talk to you guys in a few days.
Okey-doke.
See
All
ya.
right.
Hey, everyone.
Bye.